Hello, everybody. Welcome to the BasuandGodin Notebook on this Saturday, April 26th. Arpin, did you redecorate or something? You look like you're in a sort of comfy, cozy spaceship of some sort.
Yeah,
what's going on?
Yeah, I'm in my son's room, my 11-year-old son, because it's Saturday and everyone's in the house, and I had to find an alternate location for the podcast. So my son, every time the Canadiens have a bobblehead giveaway, they give some to the media, and I give them to my son. So I sit down to do the podcast, and I was like, are there two more appropriate bobbleheads on this day than Xhekaj getting the crowd riled up after doing something mean, and this guy?
Oh, Slaf.
Is this not the most appropriate Slaf look after his performance in Game 3? Like, you could just imagine him leaving the Bell Center last night looking like this.
Oh, yeah.
So kudos to the Canadiens bobblehead team, whoever's in charge of bobbleheads, for coming up with these two bobbleheads, because Xhekaj, who we're going to talk about, deserves to be talked about, but this was him last night. And this was Slafkovsky last night.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We wondered, because we've got so many topics to cover today. It was a crazy game last night. Let's start with
today's going to be a 6-hour episode, everyone.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for our listeners, it won't be. But
it won't.
Let's start with those two guys. How about Slaf? I mean, Slaf was really unhappy at himself after Game 2, which is... You argued in our previous episode that it's typical of him when he doesn't score, when his line doesn't score, and when the team loses, he tends to be hard on himself, whether it's completely, warranted or not. But in this case, I mean, he helped his line taking over the game last night. I mean, obviously, Cole Caulfield's shots stand out. Obviously, the fact that
11 of them.
Yeah. All three of the guys on that line scored a goal, but Slaf did everything that his profile as a player, everything that's needed of him for that line to be successful. He did all of that and more last night. And there was a shift in the first period, around maybe the 7-minute mark, where he was so involved and sharp, and you can tell that he would have a good game. He had a slap shot from the top of the circle. He had another chance a few seconds after, right in front of the net on a Suzuki pass. And I think that he had a third shot attempt that was blocked from the top of the circle, but he was all over on that shift, and he became a force, and you could tell that he was really on last night.
Well, I'm going to slightly amend what you said about him. Yes, he did everything that his line needs him to be, but he did everything that the Canadiens hope he will be. That's the version of Slafkovsky that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon and the scouting team drafted number 1 overall, in the hopes that in a game like this, he would look like that. And doesn't mean he's going to do it every night, but the fact that he came out, as we discussed after Game 2, and said, I need to be better. He ended every answer with, I need to be better. And then he went out and was better. Like, and not that he was bad in Game 2, but he was demonstrably better in Game 3. Like, and there was a point where he kind of skated by the Capitals net after Logan Thompson had frozen the puck and drew a crowd and got all feisty and was into it. And there's the extra stuff, the puck retrievals along the wall, not being overly physical, but being physical when he needed to be, and not going out of his way looking for it. But when it was there, he did that, was sharp with the puck. I mean, this is everything the Canadiens hoped for, and this is when they drafted him, they talked about playoff hockey. This is what they saw. And they talked about big stages. And this is what they saw in that game. Now, this is not the biggest stage that they hope he'll ever play on, but this is also his third career playoff game. And from game 1 to game 2 to game 3, we have seen a progressively better Uri Slafkovsky. And we could say that about a lot of guys on this team. Laine Hudson falls into that category. Caden Gooley falls into that category. A lot of the young core of this team that they hope to have success with in future years, those 3 guys in particular, have really elevated from game to game to game as they're learning and processing, frankly, what is a different sport at playoff time. There's none of the sports that are as altered from regular season to playoffs as hockey. It is the biggest difference between regular season and playoffs. So I think we, as civilians, tend to underestimate how different it is. We can see it with our eyes. We appreciate it. We love to watch it. But to actually live it and play it and perform in that environment takes some adjustments. You need to take in information and use that information to adjust yourself to that type of game. And to me, those 3 critical young players are doing that. And if that progression continues, like this is where I think I'd be a little worried if I were the Capitals, because like the Capitals are a finished product, right? There's not much room to go to their ceiling. They're one of the best teams in the league. They finished 2nd overall. I mean, they're at the apex of their powers. They could continue this way for a few years, but most of their players are mature. You know, Connor McMichael being the exception. Obviously, Ryan Leonard's in the lineup. He's going to get better. He's going to be a beast as well in the playoffs. For his whole career, it seems like he's adjusted really well. But by and large, that's a veteran team. That's a mature team. Whereas the Canadiens are a maturing team. Now, if they can continue to mature at this rate in this series, then it starts to get interesting. But we'll see in game 4 if they're able to keep that progression going. But game 3, to me, that was my big takeaway, is that these young guys are starting to feel comfortable, and Slafkovsky, to me, Slafkovsky and Laine Hudson were like kind of the poster childs for that in game 3.
So you say about Slav demonstrably better. I like the fact that somehow you can hear the word monster in demonstrably better. But to your point, I think it's one thing to experience those games, right? That playoff environment, which is something that they have to go through, obviously. But it's also something else entirely to understand within that environment what it takes to win a playoff game. Mm-hmm. How much of yourself you have to give, and how much you have to raise the bar in order to win. So the performance, the performance right now, of course, it brings the Canadiens in that series in no uncertain terms, but it also provides a young group a sense of what it takes to be successful and not just be there as participants of a bigger stage experience. The fact that they understood yesterday, okay, that's the extent to which I've got to raise my level if we want to win games. And that knowledge that they've got now is something that's the difference between being swept, for example, and heading into next season, having experienced the playoffs but not won a game, and now having won
the Capitals.
Yeah, exactly. And now having won a game, having that knowledge, having that belief now, and having a real chance to put yourself back in this thing. So it's super, super encouraging, because it's like for a young team like that, every night, every moment is an added layer of experience and knowledge. It's like a software that's continually updated. Mm-hmm. And it's yesterday was another update.
And I'm glad you used that term, because Martin Saint-Louis always refers to Suzuki's computer, but Hudson's computer. He refers to players' computers, and that's a great way to put it. Their software is being updated with new information, and I don't think it should be, for as good as the Canadiens looked last night. Early in that third period, that game was tied. Montembeault had just left the game. Alex Ovechkin tied the game on Jakub Dobeš, or not just left the game, but Jakub Dobeš was in the net.
Yeah.
hadn't really seen much action since replacing Montembeault in the second period. And then boom, Alex Ovechkin, backdoor in the back of the net, tie game. This team could have crumbled. That could have been a deflating goal. A team that had not fully processed and fully adjusted to playoff hockey and the pressures and the pressure that they're putting on themselves, that could have been overwhelming for them. They had done everything in their power. They completely dominated the first period, come out of it tied only on a last-minute goal by Alex Carrier. So at least they didn't go down. They didn't go into first intermission down 1-0 after completely dominating the first. And how much emphasis did we put on their start? They came out, they delivered. They played basically a perfect game. They have the fight at the end of the second period that we're going to talk about, but that's ridiculous. But that was, another sort of galvanizing, perhaps game-altering moment. And then you come out for the third, and you give up a goal, and it's tied, and the building's jumping, and tie game. So, yes, they won 6-3, but it's the fact that they did it in the third period when the chips were down, when the pressure was at its highest, and when they could have had every reason to feel deflated by that goal. They didn't. Dvorak obviously gets a lucky break. Brandon Duhaime gets his stick on that centering pass, and it goes in. But in order for that to happen, you have to have the puck in the offensive zone. You have to be buzzing a little bit. You have to be creating a little bit of confusion, which that Dvorak line was doing. Brendan Gallagher was right there waiting for that pass. That's really why Brandon Duhaime was forced to put his stick in there. So, yes, it's a lucky bounce, but
if he's not there, it's Gallagher's goal.
Yeah, it's probably, or something, but it's sometimes you create your own luck. And that was a situation where they created their own luck. And then they just went from there. They did not wilt. That Ovechkin goal did not make this team crack. It only made them stronger. And that too is an encouraging sign, because I'm sure if some people woke up this morning and saw the scoreline, 6-3, they killed them. They did in a sense, but tie game, beginning of the third period, we're very early in the third period at least. And they do what they did. And so that's a real sign of what did we say this team needs is poise as being the number one factor. That was poise. That was pretty big poise in an environment that was just, and I think we should talk about the Bell Center last night, because
man, the building has not lost its touch, huh? When it's been a while, right? It had been 8 years.
It's been 8 years, but it's only been 2 months or so, 2.5 months since Four Nations, right? And so we saw that at Four Nations, the potential of this building to react to a moment. But yes, it's been 8 years, almost exactly. It was April 20th, 2017.
Yeah.
To April 25th, 2025. And Brendan Gallagher, the only common element in those two games. What do you think?
First of all, it's a top 10 game I've ever covered.
Yeah, probably,
yeah. So is it at the top? No, but it's a memorable one.
Game 6 Caps Canadiens is probably close to the top. So again, Capitals Canadiens in the playoffs. That one in 2010, 15 years earlier. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, the Game 6 in 2010 remains, to me, unbeatable. Yeah. It reached levels of decibels that I have not heard since in that building, with all due respect to yesterday's crowd. But it's also, you talk about poise. I mean, there's the importance of the moment. You have to win that game. You don't want to get out of there trailing 0-3 in the series. You just don't. You have to win. Yeah. There's the pressure of the Bell Center, that there's the energy that comes with the building, but there's so much hype around the hype. You know what I mean? Yeah. So much is made of how much support the crowd can bring the Canadiens, that how would the players react? It might have been too much. It turns out that it wasn't. They kept their poise versus that too. They kept their poise with all sorts of things that were happening on the ice that could have made things unravel, whether it was, the Anderson fight, whether it was their number one goalie leaving the game halfway and being replaced by a kid who's admittedly was all shaken up. He said, Jakob Dobish says, I was a mess. I was, he said, I was afraid. I was excited. He said, I cried at the end. Man,
Yeah.
the kid was all over the place, and
He's a very likable kid.
oh
Yes.
man, he's such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
but, uh, but there were so many levels where the Canadians could have lost their poise. And when Martin Saint Louis talks about, making sure that you bring the momentum back, that's what they kept on doing last night. So even though the score was tied early in the third, I never stopped feeling the Canadians were in control of that game because of that vibe, the fact that say, oh, you're taking the momentum back. Wait a minute, and then they brought it back on their side. So certainly that the home ice had something to do with it, but I think it's a good thing for the NHL to remind themselves that this building and this city, the NHL's in a better place when the Montreal Canadiens are playing NHL playoff games. So yeah. The one thing though, and I want to hear you on this. There was some pushback from Washington fans and potentially, I guess, from fans from outside the city about the fact that the crowd booed Logan Thompson as he was leaving off the ice limping. Was it did they cross the line?
They were booing Charlie Lindgren coming on the ice. I think former Canadian. It's what It's what they do to former Canadians. I think that's what they were doing, but I can't speak for the fans. Maybe if they were booing Logan Thompson, that's a classless, bad thing to do, especially when, honestly, I don't know what's wrong with him, but when he stumbled over, I was like, oh man, he's concussed. Like it didn't look very good. You wouldn't want to boo a guy in that situation, playoffs or not. I would never endorse that, but I have the impression that they were booing the arrival of Charlie Lindgren, who was one of their own, and they'd been on Thompson all night. And so they were just transferring that to Lindgren. I think that's what happened, but if it's not, if people were actually booing Thompson, that's classless, and I don't like that one bit. But I want to amend. I want to tell you what last night reminded me of in a great deal. I don't think this is a game that I covered that you didn't, but it's also probably challenges Game 6, Caps Habs in 2010, and this was the first playoff game for the Winnipeg Jets 2.0 in Winnipeg against the Anaheim Ducks. I was working at NHL.com at the time. We needed to cover that game. It was the return of playoff hockey to Winnipeg. I spoke to the mayor. I spoke to the city. It had been so long. That's why the similarities are striking. It had been so long since they had a playoff game. They didn't have a franchise for years and years. And here they were at playoff time. And similarly to this, the conversation was all around the whiteout coming back, the impact the fans are going to have on the game, how the Jets could benefit from it. And I remember I finished my piece that night on this. There was this pretty significant pressure on that fan base to create the environment that everyone was talking about. Yeah. To deliver on that. It was a league-wide topic of conversation. And the Jets wound up going to overtime in that game. They lost in overtime. And for a brief moment, the crowd just went whoosh, and it just kind of died in the building. And then 2 seconds later, they start going, go Jets, go Jets, go. And the Jets left the ice to a standing ovation. They had just gone down 3-0 in the series. The series was, for all intents and purposes, over. And those fans tried to pick up their team. And in the room afterwards, the guys were blown away. And, I ended the story those fans were under pressure and they delivered. And it was a win. It was a win for Winnipeg. But ultimately, the Jets lost that series because they went down 3-0. You look at the Ottawa Senators, very similar situation. Game 3, down 0-2, coming back after years out of the playoffs. The crowd was electric. There was all this hype about how many Leafs fans are going to be in the building. Are they going to take it over? This and that. Senators fans, to their credit, they created an electric atmosphere in that building. They did everything they could to will their team to victory. They lose in overtime. They're now down 0-3. And they're on the brink of elimination. The Canadians deserve credit for taking that juice, as Martin Saint Louis put it, the juice that they needed from their fans, and transferring it directly onto the ice and finishing that game in a convincing fashion and not leaving it up to an overtime chance the way the Jets did back then and the way the Senators did the other night. They went out and closed the deal. And who really closed that deal, to all make it full circle here? But it's Juraj Slafkovsky getting a puck in the neutral zone, doing an entry, sending a pass to Caulfield, hard drive to the net, Caulfield on the tape, back of the net, 5-3, game over. And the Canadiens want moments like that from their core guys. And who are their core guys? Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, Juraj Slafkovsky, Lane Hudson, and one day Ivan Demidov, who's getting to experience this as well, has not made an impact on this series yet. But you look at the progression for Lane Hudson, you look at the progression for Juraj Slafkovsky, it's going to be longer for Demidov, but you have to think that perhaps the more games he plays, the more comfortable he gets. Maybe he plays himself into a situation where he too can make an impact on this series.
I think that he will. It showed last night that he was more comfortable. He played more minutes. It was, and I think that the biggest adjustment for him was the battles, the board battles that he has to endure in a way that he had. It was not comparable at all in the KHL, what sort of hockey he had to face. So this is entirely new for him. I think that more than the he talked about the pace of play. There's also obviously the fact that there's a lot less room to make your moves, to make your decisions, a lot less time. All of that stuff he'll adjust. But I think that the toughness part of it is also a critical adjustment to be made, especially in a playoff environment. That's why the jump is so big. But you can tell that it's already getting better, from game to game. And that third game in Montreal, coming back in an environment that was friendly to him, and that where he's got already nice memories in this very short NHL career. He's got good memories of the Bell Center. So there's a potential there, for him to become a factor in this series. And I guess it's connected in no small way to the fact that Patrick Laine is not on his line. Yes. We have to talk about Laine because, there's. So yesterday he was the only guy who was not at morning skate. He was hinted at being a game time decision in the sense that Martin St. Louis said, we're going to have more guys at warm-ups and then we'll take decisions there. When warm-ups started, they said that he was, out day-to-day with an upper body injury, which sorts of discards the notion that it might be his knee acting up. We know that he got hit in the second period last game and sort of braced his knee and reacted in a way that, it seemed painful.
But who knows? Who knows? It could be his knee, and they just said upper body. I mean, who knows?
Sure.
Yeah.
It could be, but I mean, we've been talking on this podcast about the fact that his shot has been affected lately. It could be also that it's or neither.
Yeah, or neither. Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, look, full disclosure. I think that. From the personal side of things, I hope that the guy is all right and that he can become again a valuable contributor to the Canadiens. He was instrumental in them coming back in that playoff hunt with all the power play goals that he scored. You can say without those goals, the Canadiens are not in the playoffs today.
It's one of the many turning points of the season for sure. Is his return from injury, absolutely.
Yeah. But now, if in the very short term, if you look at the way that he played, not only in game 2 of that series, but in the last few games of the regular season, it had become some sort of a hindrance because you can, wherever you would put him, it was going to be an issue at least 5-on-5. There was, he spent a lot of, not to mention the power play. Martin St. Louis spent a lot of time with him one-on-one. On the ice, when they were in Washington, trying to indicate to him where exactly to place himself, and there was a long monologue about,
And St. Louis did the same thing that he's done with Caulfield before, where he changes hands on his stick. Marty St. Louis a lefty shot. holds his stick as a righty. He's demonstrating how to shoot, what to do in certain situations. It was like 5 to 10 minutes of one-on-one instruction with Patrick Laine, and yeah, that was prior to game 2. Yeah.
Yeah, but 5-on-5. So that's the power play part. But 5-on-5, it's been so problematic in terms of cadence, in terms of pace of play on that line with Alex Newhook, that all of a sudden you put Evans with Newhook and Demidov, and it's a whole different ball game all of a sudden.
Well, what did you turned to me at one point like, wow, Armia looks so much better. And I was like, well, what's the difference? It's like Oliver Kapanen, I thought looked really good, considering the tough spot he was put in. He wasn't a world beater or anything, but did the job that was expected of him, provided the minutes that he had to provide, and didn't hurt the team, which is, I think, what we mentioned in the last episode, that he might not necessarily help the team. He's not going to hurt you, right? His comprehension of his understanding of positioning and how to follow the pace and the rhythm of a game is quite elevated for such a young player. But yeah, the power play to me was the most interesting part. And so after the game, I was talking to Slafkovsky, and I just wanted to ask him about, compare yourself prior to game 1 to the version of yourself that you feel right now. And he gave a pretty good answer. And then I was like, so you like your new spot on the power play? He's like, new spot. I'm like, well, you're still net front, but you get to pop out to the circle every now and then. I know you like shooting it from there. And he got very uncomfortable. He's like, his first reaction was like, yeah, I like it a lot. And then he was like, oh, okay, wait a minute. And he realized that if he's too enthusiastic about the new power play setup, it's like him endorsing the fact that Patrick Laine is no longer on the power play, right? So he was just like, listen, I do like it. I'm not saying that, he was very careful about it. So just no one take what he's saying as some way of twisting into like that he doesn't want Laine on the power play, whatever. He's just that with Laine not being there, Caulfield being in Laine's spot, Demidov playing both right circle and goal line, allowing Slafkovsky to play both right circle and goal line. They were rotating a lot. And the one point Slafkovsky made was adding a lefty shot allows him to do that, right? Like replacing a righty with a lefty and having two lefties on the right side of the ice means that Slafkovsky and Demidov can go back and forth and rotate. It creates different looks for the penalty kill. And the rotations he felt created open ice. And he listen, if it were up to him, if he was running the power play, he would be in that right circle every day, all day, at all times. He understands why he needs to get good at net front, why they put him there, what he needs to do there, and he's learning it, and he's trying as hard as he can to do that, and he gets it. It's not a complaint about what his job was before, but this gives him the best of both worlds, right? You provide net front if Demidov's up top to shoot, and if he's not, and he goes down to the goal line where Demidov is most comfortable, then Slafkovsky pops out in the spot where he's most comfortable. And so, the power play wasn't outstanding last night, but I thought that look, and the other big benefit is that Demidov gets more touches in space with time. And that will breed confidence in him, and that will translate to his 5-on-5 game naturally. So I agree with you. I think Laine, and we've mentioned it, but I believe that he's been carrying this injury for a long time, a relatively long time, probably more like weeks than days. It's been obvious in certain situations, his hesitancy to shoot one-timers. And so I think they should give him all the time he needs to heal. And if he does heal, then it's a no-brainer to put him back on the power play. Like, let's be clear. If Patrick Laine is healthy and he's in the lineup, he's going back in that nuclear spot and he's ripping bombs from the left circle, and they're probably going in more often than not. And the Canadiens will be better for it. But in the meantime, this is a good shakeup for the power play, because since I think in the month of April in the regular season, the Canadiens power play was clicking at 5% in the regular season. Yeah. And that carried right into the playoffs. Yes, they got a power play goal in game 1. I would hardly call that a typical power play goal. It was a goal, but and the one they got last night I think they only got the one, right? Was a Suzuki backhand off faceoff.
Yeah.
Was also not really a power play goal. I mean, yes, it technically came on a power play, but that could have easily been a 5-on-5 goal. Like it was just a faceoff win and a giveaway by John Carlson, which was, I would add, he was pressured into by Uri Slafkovsky. It was a good play off the faceoff to pressure Carlson. Fumbles the puck. Suzuki gets it backhand top shelf. Not a typical power play, like let's whip it around and work it and create a goal kind of power play goal. So let's see if that sticks for game 4. I would imagine it will. I can't imagine Patrick Laine's going to heal up that quickly. And frankly, the performance last night gave the Canadiens all the incentive they need to make sure that he is fully healed before he gets back in the lineup.
Well, you say it's a no-brainer. It's interesting that you bring up, when he's ready to come back. And if the Canadiens are successful in the playoffs from this point on, they won a crucial game and they played at close to their highest level last night. And this goes as much for Laine as for Jayden Struble, who was replaced by Xhekaj. But the whole idea of saying we stick with a winning lineup, this is real. The coaches will stick to what works. And so many things worked last night, then even if Laine is considered physically ready to play, when he comes back, you're sure that they're going to make him like take his spot back on the first unit of the power play and deconstruct things that are starting to work? Because I mean,
do you think they're going to win every game? They're not going to win every game. They're going to lose at some point. Something bad is going to happen, and they will have a reason to bring him back into the lineup at some point. I don't think it's going to happen in game 4, but they're not going to keep winning every night. They're not going to look like that every night. You know, there'll be other pockets. You know,
for sure. But Marty likes to say, is it a trend or is it a one-off? If he senses that there's a trend, an encouraging trend developing in the playoffs with that current group, and they're going to lose some games. But if those games feel like one-offs because they're tight games or whatever, and there's nothing significantly wrong about the way that they played, I don't know if the group is going to give him that opportunity and how eager Martin Saint-Louis is going to be to bring him back in the lineup, because it's been a bit of a puzzle. I won't call it a headache, but certainly a puzzle for him to say, where does that guy fit and how can I extract the best out of him?
Well, the thing is that he could be injured for as long as they need him to be injured, right? I mean, they can
okay.
I mean,
well, then that kind of proves my point, right?
No, but I'm saying, my point is that if they need him and he's healed, they can bring him back in, right? But I'm not saying it's going to happen imminently, but it's if he can shoot the puck the way he can, you live with the 5-on-5 stuff because he can provide goals and in tight games magically on his own, right? But he wasn't able to do that with whatever's bothering him. It was obvious that he was not able to do that. So I agree with you. If the Canadiens, even if they lose a game, if the way they play and their 5-on-5 game was vastly improved with him out of the lineup, Demidov is being more and more noticeable. I talked to Evans about him prior to the game, and he was just kind of like what we were saying, like with every passing game, that kid is so smart. He has such a good understanding of hockey that with every game, he's just going to get better and better. We just need to get him more touches in space. And frankly, Evans can facilitate that to some extent just because of how smart he is and how well he understands how to get the puck back and how to play with the puck. And Newhook's speed on the wing has looked great on that line. That'll keep getting better. But like, if this is the way that Laine's returned, because you could put Laine back in and put him on power play 2 if power play 1 is working with the new setup, right? Like that would not be a disaster either. That would actually probably be a good thing, frankly. And so it's because he's on Matheson's good side. He's on the side that Matheson looks at, which is the left side of the ice. Whoever's on the right side, which was Demidov prior on power play 2, is to Matheson's back, right? When he has his puck up top, Madsen passing to Laine is a natural thing because he always passes to that side, right? Fan base was outraged when Madsen would never pass to Slafkovsky on the power play last year. This year it was Demidov, so fine. Put Heineman there. Poor Heineman won't get much money touches, but you can have Laine as an option for Madsen on the side that he feels most comfortable passing to in any case. So, but that's not an issue right now. Yes, the Canadiens called him day to day. I'm sure Laine's return will be just as predicated by how the team is playing as it is by Laine's actual health. Let's put it that way. I think that's fair to say.
I'm just trying to be coherent where, in our previous episode, if our conclusion was, injury or not, our conclusion was that the Canadiens at this point in the series need to scratch him. Well, if he's healed up and the Canadiens are winning, is there really an urgency to bring him?
Well, that wasn't my conclusion. I don't remember what you said. My conclusion was if he can't shoot one-timers, then you have to take him out.
Yeah.
But if he can't shoot one-timers, then he has not only a use on the team, but he has a very significant, potentially game-changing use on the team, that he can shoot one-timers past goaltenders from distance better than almost anyone in the league other than number 8 on the white team last night. He has that power.
Yeah.
He is unequivocally either the second best or I think arguably the best at that specific thing. He's not close to the best at anything else, but at that one thing, there's almost no one better in the league. And so that does give you a reason to put him in. But if you can't do that, then there's no reason to put him in. 100%.
There's so many things that happened yesterday. We won't spend too much time talking about the guy who didn't play, but still, I just want to mention on that, though, that the fact that you had Evans with Newhook and Demidov enabled that line to do a lot more things. They were able to win some offensive zone draws, and it serves as a security blanket having, two centermen on that line, if only for faceoffs. But if you decide to stay the course and keep that line together, well, when Laine comes back, you're short of a centerman for your bottom 6. So that's potentially an issue.
I will also just add to that, Demidov in the third period of the other night, just over 60% expected goals for, playing with Evans and Newhook. Last night, 74% expected goals for with Demidov on the ice at 5-on-5, compared to 12% prior to that. So it's pretty drastic change. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the other guy, who, now that they've won, he might stay in the lineup is Xhekaj. It's a lot, going back to your bubble heads. So Arber, a lot of fuss has been made over the fact that he was not put in the lineup in the first 2 games, that the Canadiens got out-muscled in those 2 games, and that, had he been there as a protector, things might have been different. We argued against it, but it was good for him that the Canadiens as a team stepped up, and he was part of it yesterday night. What did you make of his return to play in his 10 minutes on the ice? Was he more impactful in the minutes that he played and what he did on the ice, or was he more impactful in the reassurance that he brought to the rest of the team?
Was he more impactful in the warm-up? Warm-up, jawing at Tom Wilson in warm-up. Now, when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's cool. That's what's fun. Playoffs, that's what's cool about the playoffs. This little dance at warm-up and everything. But what I was concerned about, and what I was always concerned about with him, and I think what the Canadiens are often concerned about with him, is that he's going to go out of his way to put his stamp on the game. And he didn't do that. He stayed with it himself. He still looked eager to participate in anything. And I think we're going to get to the fight here because he was at the heart of that. He made it clear that, anytime any stuff happened after the whistle, he went and had a word with whoever was doing it. But he didn't go out of his way. He didn't do anything within the game. He made some mistakes. That second Capitals goal, I think it was the second goal, but that goal where Xhekaj had the puck on his stick and tried to like a running back, tried to bull rush his way out of the zone, carrying the puck. That puck has to get out, comes
It was
back.
stopped by a Mangiapane there.
Yeah, that puck comes back in. It winds up in the back of their net. But they were few and far between those moments. Generally, his decision making was pretty sound. Generally, he was not. He let the game come to him. He didn't do anything outwardly reckless, let's say, or wasn't really in danger of taking like a bad penalty. Didn't look bad defensively. So, kudos to him. If there was someone who was going to get caught up in the atmosphere of the Bell Center, and the other thing, and I think I don't know if I mentioned this last episode, but like a big thing for Xhekaj that's hard. And like when he stepped on the ice for his first shift, he got an ovation from the crowd. The crowd,
I know,
the crowd swelled up, right?
Yeah.
And so this guy, like he knows what his bread and butter is. He knows why the fans love him. He knows it's because he's a tough guy who can beat the crap out of people. Like that is what it is, and he knows that. And it's hard for a young man to come into a building like that, get an ovation when you step on the ice, and not do that. Not do what the crowd wants you to do right away. Yeah. And to his credit, he didn't. He did not do that. He understood the importance of the game. I'm sure it was very clearly explained to him prior to the game. But when the opportunity presented itself at the end of the second period, he stepped up, right? And so he was engaged with Tom Wilson at the end of the second period. And I asked him about it. I was like, so did you tell Josh that like whenever you're in trouble, he needs to come and save you? So he kind of laughed. And he's like, well, I had Wilson and I had two refs were holding my arms. So I couldn't get free. And I thought he was going to pound me. And then Andy showed up and he said, what was the line? He's like, that's the bro code we have around here. It was his line. Okay. But then obviously Anderson comes in and the what had been built simmering since the beginning of game one boiled over into the benches. There's the Sportsnet cameras got a great shot of Spencer Carberry and the coaching staff heading towards the door to the bench, and all of a sudden having to back off as like basically 500 pounds of man plus the linesman. So like 700 odd pounds of man came barreling through that door, and they had to like get out of the way. But man, what a scene. That was, and we had a great view. You and I sit right above the visitors bench. We were just looking down on it. Yeah. And it was quite something. But Arbor, when the time came for Arbor to be Arbor, he was Arbor. And then Josh Anderson was like, no, this is my time to shine, and decided to go and settle things.
How, to your knowledge, how far back does this thing between Anderson and Wilson go?
So I spoke to Anderson about it. I spoke to Wilson about it actually prior to game one in Washington. For Anderson, like they're drafted the same year. So they're the same age. They played once in the playoffs. London Knights, Plymouth Whalers, I think it is. No. Yeah. Tom Wilson was playing for Plymouth. He's like, yeah, played him once in the playoffs. Otherwise, I've played, Anderson was like, I've played against him a bunch. It's other than that, it doesn't really go. We don't have a relationship. We don't, I talked to Wilson prior to game one. I was like, yeah, do you remember facing Anderson in the playoffs in the OHL? He's like, no, not really. I was like, really? You don't remember facing, like, he's like, well, I know we played London, but I don't remember him in particular, I was like, you really kind of brushed it aside. I told Anderson that between games 1 and 2, I was like, hey, I asked Wilson about facing you in the playoffs in the OHL. He didn't remember. He's like, oh yeah? And he just kind of snickered and kind of laughed a little bit. He's like, oh, he doesn't remember, eh? I'm sure he doesn't remember. I was like, that's what he said. I don't know what to tell you. I asked him, and that's what he said. It's like, okay, I'll keep that in mind. So all that to say that there does seem to be something there, right? I mean, the two guys don't like each other. Like that's what came through. Like Wilson to me, like was just dismissive. Like honestly, like to him and like to me, getting questions about Anderson seemed to bother him. And so it was just like, yeah, whatever. I don't need to talk about that guy. So
no, because he's not Anderson. I'm sure that in his mind, Anderson is not in his category. And very, very few people in the league are in his category. You know, everybody's looking 100%. For a Tom Wilson type. You know, it's so being a unicorn in that sense. You don't want to enter Josh Anderson in a conversation. It's not.
Tom Wilson surely considers Josh Anderson to be a poor man's Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when the two of them are out of play for 12 minutes, you know, as Anderson was impactful in that game prior to that fight, very impactful. He's the playoff Josh from 2021 was in full display from very, very early on in the game. But all things being equal, I think that the Capitals lose more if they don't have 12 minutes of Tom Wilson than if the Canadiens don't have 12 minutes of Josh Anderson.
I would. The way this series has gone, I would disagree with that. I don't think Tom Wilson has been nearly the version of Tom Wilson everyone expects him to be. And I think everyone kind of, you know, he's had moments where he's kind of menacing and sort of, but last night, and I haven't seen the Canadiens do this once with Tom Wilson, but last night in the first period, the puck went into the corner in the Capitals zone. Josh Anderson was on the right side of the ice. The puck was on the left side of the ice. Rasmus Sandin went to get it, and Josh Anderson got on his power horse. Like, he was skating hard with the intent of finishing Rasmus Sandin. And you could hear the swell in the Bell Center of anticipation as Sandin was going to get that puck. And yes. Sandin felt the swell of anticipation in the Bell Center going to get that puck. He got to the puck. He flipped it high in the air. It only got to his own blue line, and he bailed. He's like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I do not want any part of this. And Anderson went slamming into the wall and just missed him. That, to me, was 2021 Josh Anderson. Was Rasmus Sandin's behavior in that situation is what Josh Anderson brings to the table. Tom Wilson, Lane Hudson did that a couple of times in game one, where he felt Tom Wilson coming and just got rid of the puck and got out of there and saved himself, which, frankly, I'm sure the Canadiens are fine with. But generally, you know, Tom Wilson not being there, the Capitals still have Duhaime, they have Dowd, they have Ovechkin, they have other guys who can really bring that element.
Yeah, but it's not just that. He scored 30. Yeah, but he scored 33 goals this year.
But when has he been dangerous in the series? Like, honestly, like, just look at the 3 games in the series. Who's been a more impactful player?
No. Between the two, it's been Anderson.
So that's why I'm kind of disputing your claim that losing Wilson. I think it hurts the Canadiens more to lose Anderson for 12 minutes than it hurts the Capitals to lose Wilson for 12 minutes. Yeah, right now, the way they're playing right now.
Okay, but it's still, in my view, a small sample. I think that I think that Anderson plays the way that the playoff Anderson I know and expected is playing. He delivers on all fronts. It's just that, to me, Wilson is a bit of a ticking bomb, and you know, the further you go, I would come to expect him to have more of an impact that he's had in this first couple of games or 3 games, because of not only the physical aspect of his game, but the fact that he's been able to provide so many goals for his team, and the fact that he's a pivotal aspect of a second line that's been instrumental to the Capitals' success this year. So,
yeah,
to me,
so would I. Listen, if you said Josh Anderson and Tom Wilson have been suspended for 3 games each, 100% advantage Canadiens, for sure. But in a short sample, but in the short term of the 12 minutes of that game particularly, I don't think the Canadiens came out. I don't think.
Okay, you just took me. Yeah. You just took me too literally, because it's the same spirit as were they to lose 3 games. To me, it's the same. I'm not talking about.
I'm talking about the context of the game, like losing them for 12 minutes. Yeah.
Well, last night Anderson was definitely a more impactful player. There's no debate there.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. You said if it's between Wilson and Anderson losing for 12 minutes, Anderson is more. I'm just saying. Or Wilson is more, and I don't think that's the case right now. And until Anderson proves otherwise, like, I don't feel he's been a very impactful player. I'm looking at his series-long Corsi percentage right now. 40 minutes at 5-on-5. He's rocking a 33% Corsi right now.
You're talking about Wilson, right?
I'm talking about Tom Wilson. 37.05 expected goals 37.05% at 5-on-5. It's not been an impactful player, honestly. And he needs to, honestly, I think the residual effect of that fight and him doing the wow-wang and that going viral all over the place.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to see, I think in game 4, we're going to see a very problematic Tom Wilson on the Capitals side, because this series has not gone well for him. That situation didn't go well for him. The games are not, he's not looked like the best version of himself at all. And at some point, I agree with you, ticking time bomb is going to explode. And that can either be hugely beneficial to the Capitals or it could be hugely detrimental to the Capitals. There's really nothing in between. So let's see what version we get in game 4.
It's a little bit like Xhekaj. You say he's there. You want him to bring what he brings, but there might be too much of it, and he puts his team in trouble. And the history with Tom Wilson is even more egregious. Although he's been a bit calmer in the last 2 or 3 years. He doesn't do, he hasn't been suspended as much as he was in his first few seasons in the league. But there's always a chance.
There's always a chance.
What the hell is this guy going to do tonight? But listen, Anderson has been, to use what Marty's expression when it comes to Brendan Gallagher, is bringing the other guys in the fight. Gallagher too, for that matter. He didn't lose a single battle in the corner and came out with the puck all night long last night. Those two together on the same line, they've provided so much energy and determination to the rest of the group. But it's
Gallagher's playing through something too. Pretty obvious at this point.
But it doesn't show.
Doesn't show. No, he's been fantastic. He was fantastic last night. He was very good and physical and just involved.
Yeah.
And everything. Just as an aside, do you want to know who leads the Capitals in expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5 through 3 games?
Lars Eller?
Close. Ryan Leonard.
Wow.
In 33 minutes at 5-on-5 has a 77.7 expected goals for percentage. Second on the team, Alex Alexiev, Fishbowl, is second. Over 70%. Now, granted, these guys are getting favorable matchups. You got to keep that in mind. And third is Lars Eller. And so the worst on the team, Rasmus Sandin, Tom Wilson, Connor McMichael, Alex Ovechkin, Nick Dowd, Matt Roy. Ovechkin and Wilson are 2 of the 4 worst 5-on-5 expected goals percentage players on the Capitals. And that would be my one concern for the Canadiens is in game 4, if those 2 guys decide that we haven't been good enough, much like Slafkovsky decided he hadn't been good enough, and much like Hudson said he hadn't been good enough, if those 2 guys look at the series right now and be like, we're not doing our jobs, we need to be better, then game 4 is going to be, they're going to be a handful in game 4. Because so far, other than game 1, where Ovechkin was just wrecking everything around him and obviously scored the winner in overtime and got a goal and was just everywhere and was very impactful, like the last 2 games, not so much. He scored last night, but other than that, do you remember really the only time you really noticed him, or his next most noticeable thing, was Lane Hudson cutting in front of him to cut off a pass and sending it to Cole Caulfield at just before the end of the second for a goal. And
most beautiful pass of the night.
Most beautiful everything of the night. Most beautiful read of the night. Most beautiful gumption and balls of the night. Like, it's just like, it was just a Lane Hudson masterpiece, basically. So yeah, that's the one thing. Now, we've gone far enough into this episode without talking about the biggest storyline coming out of that game.
Yeah.
Which is the goaltending situation on both sides.
That's something that really could have a tremendous effect on the outcome of this series.
Yes.
I don't know, it's right now, as with the time we record this podcast, there hasn't been any update on either goalie. Of course, so Montembeault was the first to go down, halfway in the game, TV timeout, goes to the bench, talks to the trainer, Jim Ramsey, signals to him that something is wrong, that he's going to try to play through it. Jakub Dobeš hears it, goes to stretch, and for the next 6 or 7 minutes of play, roughly, he's getting ready, which is something that a backup goalie rarely has the
Well, you pointed it
opportunity
out
to
to
do.
me. You just turned to me as like Dobish is stretching. I was like, what? What do you
Yeah.
mean Dobish is stretching? And I looked down and he wasn't in his seat. I was like, sounds good on you. You noticed that. That was good.
So usually backup goalies, either because they see their team being pummeled, the goalie struggling, or the goalie getting injured, they get asked to play right away. So he had a few minutes to process it and picture the real possibility that he might enter the game. And sure enough, next TV timeout, Samuel Montembeault pulled himself out of the game. So the fact that he tried to play through something
After allowing a goal in the interim. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that indicates that it might be less serious than what happened to Logan Thompson, but Logan Thompson was favoring his left leg and couldn't put any weight on his left leg as he was exiting the ice after being rampaged by his own player in a move that if it was a Canadiens player, it probably would have resulted in a suspension.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Dylan Strome cross-checked him in the neck. I mean, not only ran him over, he braced himself for the impact with his stick and basically cross-checked Logan Thompson. And that 100%, you would have been suspended for multiple games if a Canadiens player had done that.
So there was a head. There was probably the shoulder also that took part of the hit, a shoulder that Thompson had been hurt on a Brendan Gallagher shot in the second period.
Yeah.
And then in the contact, he failed awkwardly, and I think that he injured his knee in that moment. So
well, he also looked a little dazed. I mean, when he got up and sort of stumbled over, yes, it could be the leg, but I looked at him and he looked kind of out of it as well. Like
he didn't. Surely, one thing's for sure, he didn't look like a guy who will be ready to play tomorrow night.
Probably not. Not.
So the version of the Washington Capitals that we've seen in the first two games, with Thompson being lights out and a difference maker for them, versus Charlie Lindgren being in net for the Capitals in the last few weeks of the season, when there was nothing to play for really for the Caps. We must mention that, but still they were leaking goals a lot. It seems as though it's two different teams depending on who's the goalie.
Yeah.
Lindgren has not been as good as he was last year. So I don't know if Montembeault is going to be back or when he's going to be back, but we have a situation here where if any or both of the starting goaltenders were to lose time to injuries, it could change completely the outcome of that series. That's the biggest factor right now.
Well, I think in both Lindgren's case and Dobesh's case, in Lindgren's last 4 games, this is from, my colleague Sean Gentili's story. He wrote about this last night. And Lindgren's final 14 games, he had an .884 save percentage and had allowed nearly 2 goals above expected. So the opposite of goals saved above expected. He was goals saved below expected. So not great, but Dobesh, over the last little while, had grown to be less than trustworthy. He had some excellent games in terms of goals allowed and save percentage, but honestly, he's this season he played 2 of the more how do you put it, less than confidence-inducing 1 goal against performances, like that game in Calgary where he was just all over the place and was somehow pulling off miraculous saves, but only had to do so because he was so far out of position initially, and he's super athletic, right? So it's like he can do that. I think the Canadiens really closed their ranks around him once he went in the net. It was noticeable the extent to which the Canadiens were packing the home plate area with Dobesh in net, far more so than they were with Sam Montembeault. You had guys diving to block shots. It was all hands on deck. Let's protect our guy. Let's protect our this game and come out of there with a win. But, he had a few saves to make in the third. He did them. He obviously had the great quote that I missed in the room afterwards. But yeah, I don't know who has the edge. If it winds up being Lindgren versus Dobesh, I'm not sure who has the edge there. It's probably pretty much even as far as I'm concerned. Um, the interesting thing last night was that the Laval Rocket players were at the game. Did you see them?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw them. I saw maybe 12 to 15 of those guys.
Yeah, I didn't notice Primo there. Did you see Primo there?
I didn't see
or
Primo.
Fowler.
I didn't see. No, I didn't see any of the goalies. I saw, Engstrom, Tuck, Xhekaj, a bunch of them.
A bunch of them were there.
Davidson.
Kidney was there. Yeah, there was a bunch of them.
Yeah, bunch of.
What do they? So what do the Canadian now? The Capitals actually have a third goalie with them. Yeah. What's his name? Clay Stevenson, I think it is. He played it towards the end of the season. Mm-hmm. They actually have him. It's interesting because the Capitals have two right-catching goalies. They have him primarily so that the Capitals shooters can shoot against a left-catching goalie, so that they can practice against a goalie that they're going to, like the one they're going to face in the game. So he's in Montreal already. He presumably is in a similar situation to the Canadiens, would eventually go play for Hershey in the playoffs. Since they have a bye, he doesn't have to be there. The Laval Rocket also have a bye.
Yeah.
Now, what do they do in this situation? I would imagine that they're going to call Primo up if Montembeault is not healthy.
They have no other choice. I mean,
could they call up Fowler?
No, Fowler's signed to an AHL deal.
Yeah, that's right. Fowler's signed to an AHL deal. So yeah, so we should have. I would imagine. I mean, if Montembeault was hurt enough to pull himself out of Game 3 of a playoff game where they're down 0-2 in the series and the game is not anywhere close to being decided, I can't imagine he's going to play in Game 4 either. Like, that's a pretty severe thing to pull yourself out of a game in that situation.
Yeah.
Yes, he skated off the ice, but whatever's bothering him had to be significant enough for him to do that. God knows he would have fought through anything possible to stay in that game at that moment. So we're probably going to have a Lindgren versus Dobeš showdown in Game 4, and I honestly couldn't even tell you who has the edge there. I think it's going to be a wild game, and I think we're going to see a lot of goals in Game 4.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, look, Lindgren played 4 games last year, didn't win a single one of them. Had an .864 save percentage in the playoffs.
That was a severely overmatched Capitals team, though. Like, if you remember that series, I remember Spencer Carberry after that series just very bluntly and honestly talking about how not good enough the Capitals were to face the Rangers. So I wouldn't.
But I mean, Lindgren had contributed to them making the playoffs in the first place. So
Absolutely.
I won't take anything away from Charlie.
At least he had that playoff experience too. I mean, that's Dobeš's his playoff experience is limited to what he had last night. So,
but I mean, without getting too carried away and starting pointing at the Bell Center rafters, the Canadiens have a history of rookie goalies coming out of nowhere and performing in the playoffs. Listen, and you don't have to have your number retired. I can include Steve Penny in that. In that same sentence. But it's just it's a great unknown. And honestly, to his credit, he had some wonky games in the second half of the season, Dobeš, but I think they finished strong. His last couple of starts, in Toronto, he played super well, despite the fact that the Canadiens lost.
100%. Yeah.
So I think that he regrouped just on time. And also the Canadiens, I thought, apart from the first goal where, Montembeault gave a juicy rebound rebounds
were flying all over the place last night, both sides.
Absolutely. And I think it was it Mangiapane or Roy? I can't remember exactly who jumped on that rebound, but there was clearly a missed assignment there because Christian Dvorak, when you play man-to-man, Christian Dvorak should have been able to identify his guy earlier, and there was one Capitals player that was left alone to jump on that rebound, and eventually McMichael buried it.
It was Matt Roy.
It was Roy, right?
It was Matt Roy, yeah.
So apart from that, I thought that defensively, the Canadiens, especially in the first period, when they would not clear the zone quickly, they would still leave the Capitals swirl around in their zone and do their cycle game, but they kept them on the outside a great deal. That's where I thought that defensively, the big improvement compared to the first couple of games was how they did not let the Capitals, set up shop right in front of the Canadiens' net. Maybe that when Spencer Carberry says we didn't play close to our best game or whatever, that's certainly an area where he'll seek for an improvement in Game 4.
I also think they limited it to one, max 2 shifts in their own end. They didn't let the Capitals just run shift after shift in their zone. There was much shorter lapses of pressure from the Capitals before the Canadiens broke it.
But for the Canadiens to remain successful, even more so if Montembeault's not there to bail them out and they have to turn to Dobesh, if they want to help Dobesh, they have to continue in that sense in Game 4. I think it's going to be a critical part of the game.
Yeah, I agree. So listen, we have to, we're recording this on Saturday morning. We have to go to the Bell Center, or I do at least, to go see the Capitals, and then the Canadiens coaches are going to talk. So I should correct one thing I said earlier. The 6th goal last night from Alex Newhook was also a power play goal. So, and that was a pretty legitimate power play goal, but the game was, that really, really iced the game. But yeah, just that one amendment to what I said earlier. Otherwise, yeah, Game 4 Sunday podcast, quick turnaround for the podcast. We'll be back on Monday with our subscribers only episode.
Yeah, we'll ask our, don't forget that you can send us your email. Our paid subscribers can send us through the chat their questions for the mailbag. There's already a few that have been thrown in there in the last day or two. So keep them coming. And so we'll be there after Game 4. The series is now guaranteed to go back to Washington. I love it.
I booked my flight last night.
Good on you.
At like 1 a.m.
Well,
yeah.
I wish I could have done the same, but it's in somebody else's hands right now. But I will see you in Washington, though. All right. So
I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, before that.
Gosh, I'll see you later today.
Yeah, right.
How about you guys? We'll see each other. Well, we'll talk to you for sure, very shortly on Monday. So take care, enjoy your hockey, and have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.